Hello, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Really, really well. How wonderful to talk to you. How are things?
Oh, even if it's just virtually.
So as we speak, we should have had a hurricane right
I
outside.
know. Thank you. Thank you. The first good thing that happened in 2020 is we didn't have a hurricane.
I know, but you know what? As the commissioner that represents a community and the bunch of assets that could have been impacted by this hurricane, I just find it so interesting that today is a day that you and I picked to talk about this
Yeah.
pandemic because there's so many things that are interrelated with this. So first of all, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. District 5 is really special in my heart because I used to live there for decades before moving a little bit further south. But I know your community, the community you represent really well. I went to high school there. I lived most of my life there. I had my art studio there. You know, it's the core. It's a center of Miami, and of course, it incorporates the beach, which I also had a very strong relationship with. It's also among the most vulnerable places when it comes to sea level rise. And although we're talking about Corona, I almost want to start there because we were so close to having a natural force, but a force that was in so many ways, that is in so many ways impacted by human impacts on the climate, right? The warming seas promise to give us even a stronger hurricane season this year. And just like the way we pollute our planet and put carbon in the atmosphere causes warmth to bring hurricanes that increase storm surge to our community impact District 5 and the county, ground zero. So do our impacts in chopping down trees, going into the wilderness, bringing humans into contact with animals that they would have otherwise not been in contact with, creates pandemics. And I know your work with the State Department over the years understands that intimately. And I just, at this moment when we have a pandemic, when we have 1/3 of our GDP, where over 1,600 of our GDP reduced by 1/3 in the last quarter, where just yesterday, 1,600 of our Miami-Dade residents perished to this disease. As a commissioner who helps to lead us as the governing body for this region, how do you think that we as a society writ large, no, you can talk federally or regionally, because in so many ways we are the future of America and we are the capital of this hemisphere. How are we as a society managing the chaos before us and the chaos to come?
Well, we are extremely lucky today that this storm has not come anywhere near us, but one will. And unfortunately, because of the rising temperatures, both of the ocean and of the air, we are facing a future of harder, more dangerous, bigger storms. And you're right, I was thinking about back to pre-pandemic times when we were horrified watching what the president of Brazil was doing, burning the forests.
Remember that?
Right? I mean, and so the pandemic, of course, has taken priority and is front in our mind. But at the end of it, we do have, I mean, I now feel like Dr. Fauci is my patron saint. I'm like, please, Dr. Fauci, help us find a vaccine. But I do believe, we will march forward towards that path. And whether that's 6 months from now, 9 months from now, 12 months from now, we will emerge from this pandemic damaged and different and hopeful and with different innovations. But from what I can tell, we still have not impacted the transition to clean and green that will stop the threat of sea level rise, right? Which is our big issue here. We can talk about climate change, but for us on our daily basis, we're talking about sea level rise. And quite frankly, in District 5, when, which is a water district, right? It actually has the ocean in it, then it comes across the bay, and then it goes up the Miami River into Little Havana. When you look at the maps, depending on where you are, particularly in parts of East Little Havana, you don't have to be by the river to worry about flooding. The groundwater is so high that you can be in a neighborhood blocks or a little street blocks from the river. And if we have high tide flooding or storm surge, you're experiencing surge and you don't see any water, meaning Mother Nature's water that we stereotype, like the bay, the river, the ocean, anywhere near you. So we in District 5 have a very, very fragile ecosystem that is completely dependent on mitigating, building new infrastructure, and then stopping this nonsense, right? And stopping this nonsense is, quite frankly, stopping carbon emissions. There's nothing confusing about it, about what the solution is. And that will mean a faster evolution or revolution towards green energy, towards electric vehicles, towards making sure, even at the government level, our buildings are more powered by solar power. There's just a lot that needs to be done, and we need to be planting trees, not burning them down.
Sadly, our federal government doubles down on deregulating and investing in the fossil industry. China builds, this is post-pandemic, China builds more coal mines, and only Europe is investing in cleaner and clean energy and greener technologies. So I personally am distressed about how something so much relevant to everyone's livelihood today can be kicked down the road. And I don't have to look very far. I just have to look at how this country is dealing with a present day pandemic.
There's a sliver of a silver lining.
You're saying November 3rd? Because that's what I'm saying.
Well, yes. What are they? It used to be, in Game of Thrones, winter is coming, November is coming. I'll take the fall this year. But no, I was thinking about the work that we've been doing on Miami Beach to pedestrianize and add bike lanes, which should have been done a long time ago. And, governments tend to be like, we're slow sometimes. But quite frankly, the need for social distancing is allowing incredible innovation. So for example, Ocean Drive is now completely pedestrianized. So we've expanded for sidewalk cafes so that perhaps those businesses can survive. And then you can see during the day, there's lots of people there. People are cycling there. And literally, as we're speaking this week, the city of Miami Beach, in cooperation with the county, is completely redoing Washington Avenue to have the first protected bike lanes where the parking is next to the bike. So these are some permanent changes that quite frankly are green, because if we make it safer to walk and bike, people will do that. If you believe you're taking your life in your hand to ride a bike in Miami-Dade County, you're going to get in your car. And it's not, and even transportation is connected to that. Public transportation is connected to that, because if we're going to get on a train or a metro mover, we get there as a pedestrian generally. Sometimes we're a park and rider, but in generally public transportation begins in your sneakers. So it's pretty, it's been exciting to see Miami Beach sort of take this and move forward very dramatically into implementing their bicycle plan, which probably wouldn't have happened for another 5 years.
Yeah, so it is, there are absolutely a lot of reasons for us to be optimistic. And I also know that generally, the county and the body politic in South Florida are moving towards an understanding, a realization that we're in trouble and we have to do something about it. In my humble opinion, I don't think we're doing enough, and I don't think we're doing it fast enough. And I'm not sure what is happening at the city of Miami. insofar as, Jane Gilbert's job in the Office of Sustainability there, but the Chief Resilience Officer in the city of Miami. My hope is that there's some restructuring and that we're going to come out on the other end. But I just know that at a time of immediate crisis, like the way we have now, to treat climate change the way we treated the pandemic when it was in Italy and when it was in China, to not be prepared, to not have our supply chain in order, and not to today, still have tracing in Miami-Dade County at the level it needs to be, indicates to me, with 1,600 people dead, that somehow we still haven't learned our lessons. And we're not going to learn them for climate change, but not just climate change. And you're right, it's sea level rise. And before sea level rise, as you know, saltwater intrusion into our aquifer. So that happens before those blocks in Little Havana get flooded with water. They will happen with a storm like the one we avoided today. But in the future, that's inevitable. And I know that park well, because that was my old daycare center. Jose Marti Park, by the way, used to be Centro Mater. That's what.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That was my daycare center. Then it became a park, and the daycare center moved across the street. But as we see these problems coming towards us, I just don't know. And I know our nation is polarized right now, and right now everyone's really, really worried about the unemployment checks that expired yesterday, the $600 employment checks. And there's bitter partisan politics that's not letting us solve it. And I'm just wondering, down here at this regional level, how do we begin through our political leadership to see each other in a new way and to really understand that we're all in this together, right? Like the pandemic, if a portion of Miami-Dade County isn't wearing masks and is transmitting the disease, then all of Miami-Dade County is impacted. We're all in this together. But somehow we seem to go to the extremes, and that usually happens during pandemics. There's scapegoating, there's attacks, right? In scarcity, we really get ugly as human beings. So I'm just wondering, you as one of our leaders, one who's really seen the world and worked at different tiers, from manufacturing to like someone like you who's got this broader perspective and sits in that dais. How do you see us moving forward beyond this pandemic, and how do we take the lessons that we've learned and really implement them into real change?
We were talking on a global level. One of America's great strengths is our rugged individualism, right? And our ability to think innovatively and say, I can make it, and it's the American dream, and it's the American way, and anyone can arrive here and at the end of their lives be wildly successful. But that dependence on myself and the importance of self, other cultures are a little more, simpatico with this idea of it's not just me, it's me and my neighbors, right? Or me and my community. And so I do think some of that is what's going on here. But I also think what happened in Miami is we watched Italy. I don't know. I watched Italy in fear. And we stayed home. And we prevented what I consider to be a horrific disaster. And as a result of that, people thought their actions meant nothing.
Right.
Okay, and it's sort of like when the police tell you we captured someone that was going to be a terrorist. You don't know how bad it would have been really, because they prevented it, and so we prevented it. And so the minute we began to start experimenting with what can be open and what cannot be open, people just thought it was a free-for-all, and we saw that with young people. But I know it's always easy to blame young people, but young people in bars or young people in restaurants and young people at parties. But I can tell you, there were family gatherings. I have met most of the people I have met that have had this. It's come through family gatherings, some of which occurred in backyards and some of which occurred kind of going in and out of the backyard and the kitchen. And so we let our guard down. And the virus is wicked. And it is mean and it is aggressive. And the only way to stop it right now is us. We have a governor that's not super interested in shutting down again. And so we have to behave differently in order to save each other. I haven't left the house without a mask. I don't even take my garbage to the garbage chute without a mask on because I don't want to run into my neighbor, right? And possibly infect her. I mean, I don't think I have COVID, but we don't know. I don't know. It could be asymptomatic. And so I wear a mask everywhere. I have quite the collection. I actually had to buy a box to put them in so that they just didn't like lay all around the entryway. I'm like, if this is the new normal, it has to be organized.
Yeah. No, there's incredible wisdom in what you're sharing with us, and that I do agree with you. I remember our superintendent closing down schools in the 13th, and then shortly after, all the other educational institutions ensued. The mayor did the same thing, yeah. And we took this seriously. We stayed in place, and then I saw it opening up little by little. The sad thing is that while all that was happening, the federal government, the state government, did nothing, and we wasted all that time.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but if the state of Florida would have had contact tracing in place when we were at that very low level as opening up was happening, you could go, you could get tested, you could get a quick, we were at that sort of every 2 days later, you got your results, you could contact trace, we could have stopped this thing. But they didn't have a contact tracing plan and they let us down. The Department of Health has let us down over and over and over again. I see no end to their letting us down. And so opening up without contact tracing, it is not a decision that you can make. And now I think we're too late for contact tracing. So what do you do when there's 2,000 new cases or 3,000 new cases a day? And you're not getting the results on those results are from those people had COVID 10 days ago. Right. How do they remember what they were doing? I have a calendar, but it's not perfect.
No, it is worrisome. I mean, I'm not really sure what the end is. I'm glad that just a couple of minutes ago you talked about how it's a wicked virus and it's super contagious, and it's also still here. It hasn't gone anywhere. And now it's even here in a higher prevalence. So now more than ever, we have to take this seriously. I just don't know what the natural end to this is. And I just fear that it's may go down a little bit. Looks like we're plateauing. Yeah. And the death cases are still increasing, but we're still out there. We're still out there. So I don't know what the natural end to this is. I do personally want to take this moment to thank you as the commissioner who sat on that dais and introduced a motion to fund our cultural organizations for an additional $10 million, because these are small businesses in every municipality across the entire county that have people who work, and no one's buying theater tickets and no one's writing checks. The entire ability for the cultural ecosystem of Miami-Dade County to sustain itself is threatened because we don't know when theaters open up. We don't know when museums and galleries open up again. So culture in many ways is what helps us understand ourselves, communicate ourselves, understand our humanity. It's just an essential part of the human experience. It also happens to be one of our most robust economic engines in Miami-Dade County, right? It's what fuels so much of the economic success, from tourism to development in this community. So thank you for having that wisdom and the leadership to actually literally lead your commission in what I think may have been a close to unanimous vote.
Yeah, it was unanimous, but
to fund culture, so thank you.
Miami is not Miami without our cultural and our arts institutions. Whether we're talking about music or theater or the opera, right? Or our little Hispanic theaters, right? Which are keeping art forms from both old and new all around the Hispanic world open too. we get to explore our history so we know where we came from, whether that's at History Miami or at the Deering Estate or Vizcaya. But as you said, it's a giant part of our economy. It's about a $1.4 billion industry, okay? So it matters, and it employs 40,000 people. And if I had to hazard or make a guess, more than half, maybe 3/4 of those folks are either without work or with very few hours. And so when we do come out of this, and when we do have a vaccine and people are more comfortable traveling and enjoying Miami, we like to always stereotype ourselves, oh, they're here for the beach. And no, we know they're not always here for the beach, right? They're here because, yes, it's fun to enjoy the beach, but we have great food, we have great museums, we have great festivals, from film festivals to Art Basel. And without that, if we don't come back with the arts, we won't be who we were.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if we lose a cultural organization, that is like having a species go extinct. You don't get it back. Yeah. And it's easier to put other parts of our private sector back together again, especially things that are franchised, whatnot. But when you lose the institutional memory of a cultural organization, its artistic director, its board, its clients, that soul is snuffed out, you know. So thank you for understanding that. I know that at the state level, we didn't get all the funding we want, but we had some legislators that at least didn't go down to what I was fearing. And in the county, it was heartening to see that motion go through. And my hope is that as we move forward to next year's budget, we'll also have some cultural programming there. And that doesn't take away from all the other needs that nonprofit have, that the school system, that all of us that are trying to get PPEs out to the places where they need to be, the issues we're going to have with healthcare, all these are huge. I just wanted to take this moment to thank you for understanding that the cultural community is an intricate part of who we are as Miami, and it's not some elitist thing that is something that you can cut off during moments of crisis. Indeed, it is during moments of crisis that you need the arts more than ever. So thanks for that. What do we do now? What do we do? You know, schools are going to be pushed to October. What do we do now with the system that we have, the government that we have? What do we do now to help Miami not go further down this route? What do we do as a society to address the crisis that we're in now?
So first of all, we take care of ourselves from a health perspective, but from a community perspective, we have to go right back to the basics, right? Do people have enough to eat, right? Because we've seen I believe we're now up to, we went from, I'll get the numbers wrong, but essentially we went from 30% of families using SNAP programs to something like 40%. So a giant increase in that. But if you're not a US citizen, and we know we have many people of mixed and many families of mixed status here, none of those benefits are available. So we thought maybe when the virus was going down and we could open up, the food insecurity things would go away. It's not going away. I get calls every day about it. So we've got to continue to focus on that. We also have to focus on how do we pay rent and how do we pay mortgages, right? Because you can't have people on the street, but at the same time, not every landlord, I mean, we imagine landlords as these big companies, and yes, there are those big companies.
Yeah, but I know the little Havana ones too.
But you know them, like they have 8 apartments and 3 of their people can't pay their rent. And as a result, they're defaulting on their mortgage. So I did also introduce a program to spend $10 million of the CARES Act money with low income and moderate income families to help with rent assistance. That is going to be a first step on that. I think we're going to need more. We are also going to have a program, we're right now working the mechanics on it for these small landlords, right? Like we were just talking about in Little Havana. If you have less than 5 units, you'll be able and you can show that one or more of your tenants has not been able to pay, you'll be able to get some assistance. So we got to keep people staying in their houses, but and continue not evicting people. But that doesn't mean the landlords and the small landlords aren't struggling. They are. And then last but not least, to the best of our ability, we've got to get money, and this is going to have to come from the federal government, to continue to help our small businesses to stay afloat, and stay afloat even if they're closed, right? So even if they're closed, can they just make the mortgage payment, right? And can they pay the lease on their equipment? And that's why the federal government better step up and help with our employees. Because if we're able at the local level with federal assistance to kind of do these things, and they take care of the human beings and make sure that unemployment, listen, I haven't met anybody that wants to never have a job. They are afraid that the economy will come back half the level it was. And if they don't take a job now, they'll never have one. That false narrative of, oh, you're paying people $600 to stay home. Well, who have you met? Right? I mean, this is just fake. These are people that do not know any normal human beings. They're literally sitting in Washington talking to themselves. Well, I can tell you, I know people that would work because, by the way, there are families that don't even qualify for that $600 because of the mixed status issues that go on in Miami-Dade County, and our federal government is so punitive towards families with mixed status individuals. So the basics, right? Food, a roof over your head, and try to keep the basic costs for our small businesses going is going to be how we sort of float through. And we will emerge differently. It's not going to be the same, and it's going to be hard, but we will get through it. And the federal government the Senate needs to fly back to Washington. What is wrong with these people? We are in a crisis, and they're home for the weekend. I don't understand. Meanwhile, the House of Representatives are there. We have a nice delegation from South Dade. They're up there. I know my Congresswoman Shalala is up there, ready to vote. So we need the federal government. They are us, I normally watch the deficit. For the next year, I don't care about the deficit. I want people to eat. I want them to have a place to live. I want them to pay for their health insurance. And I want us, when a vaccine comes back and we get it, then maybe we can start working on the deficit then. But this is not the year to be cheap. We need the federal government to act. And we need to act locally too, which we are, but it's going to be a partnership.
One last sort of area I want to talk about, and it's sort of like exploring broader pictures or lessons learned. And they could be from the regional level or the national level. You've spoken a little bit about the national paralysis or dysfunction, right? You have the upper chamber playing politics, or playing chicken. I don't know what they're doing, but they're literally not in Washington. The lower chamber is there negotiating. In times of crisis, does the political dysfunction that normally exists gets exacerbated, exaggerated? Do we become the worst aspects of ourselves? Or does somehow during a crisis, and I think about hurricanes, when a hurricane's coming, community usually comes together. And I know that there are parts of our society where people really have come together. I mean, I'm not trying to demonize the whole thing, but I'm so anguished by the way that our government has let something that was totally preventable. 150,000 Americans did not have to die. We did not have to lose a third of our economy. This was so preventable, right? This was so preventable. I'm just wondering if that dysfunction that manifests itself at the national level, and to a degree, I'm sorry, at the state level, because the health department is a state, it may say Dade County Health Department, but it is a state department. So the dysfunction at both those levels of government, is there anything that has a parallel with the local government that you're seeing as problematic, something that could grow worse and worse if this pandemic gets even more dangerous and creates more scarcity and more fear in our community? are there some things we need to check and make sure about at the local level, municipalities versus county, or struggles within county government, or people who are posturing themselves for political reasons? Is there something like that happening now that you care to see?
Well, we are in a big old political pot until the mayoral elections happen here in Miami-Dade County. And anyone that has been watching the news this week has seen there are a number of mayors who are arguing that the county has not been using CARES Act money to help the cities, which in my opinion is incorrect, because we just talked about the rent program. Doesn't matter where you live in Miami-Dade, you get to participate. We just talked about the arts program. Doesn't matter where your theater is or where your museum is or where your art studio is, you get to participate. All of the small business programs, doesn't matter. So all of those programs that are helping people and businesses are Miami-Dade County-wide. But it's been interesting to watch how the cities and the county mayor, they have chosen to fight rather than converse and collaborate. Because at the end of the day, we at the county level do intend to reimburse the cities for all of their CARES related. It has to comply with the law. Obviously, we're not going to do something that's outside of the law, but we intend to do that. But it has been heartbreaking for me to watch all this happening at this level and on television. Right? Does anyone have a phone? Can you call each other, guys? Call up each other. And so that has been very, very disheartening. I'm kind of lucky because I have Miami Beach and the city of Miami, and Miami Beach is not as embroiled in that sort of political pot that we have going on here on the other side of the causeway. And so that has been very collegial. We already have all of the spreadsheets needed to reimburse everything for them. But the politics has been disappointing, particularly at the city mayors with the county mayor. And I like all of them as human beings, but they have chosen to argue and fight rather than work for the people. And so I have kept my head down and I say, I look for need. Oh, no one at the county is creating a rent relief program. Well, I'll do that. And guess what? City residents will benefit from that. Guess what? No one's moving money out to the arts communities. I'll work on that. And so while these guys fight, I don't care. I just try to work on some things and help people. Yeah. I do the best I can.
Well, no, I hear and celebrate you. That's why I sent it a few weeks ago. No, the reason I bring this up is because there's a point where the bickering needs to be called out. And I bring this up because of so many of the other conversations I've had have talked about mixed messages, the same way we had them from DC and Tallahassee and across our state. There's also mixed messages that have come across in work what people are supposed to do or not do locally, and I think that's dangerous, right? And I'm just looking ahead. God, if it's bad now. I mean, 96 people died yesterday, which was the highest number ever. A little fewer died today. Let's see what numbers bring tomorrow. But if these numbers start getting like New York numbers and there's this panic, I'm just wondering, widespread panic. I think there's some now, but there's still this sense that it's not my thing. And I hear you, the families that get together, there's this certain familiarity, if you will. Like, it's almost like if the virus is inside a person that we like, then we're not going to get infected. But if it's inside a stranger, then we will. And it's just absurd. It's human nature, right? Like, it's how can my daughter give me the infection? She's my daughter. She loves me. So there's this sort of, and I understand that it's part of our human frailty, right?
Yeah.
But getting mixed messages that don't reinforce what the real problem is gets us in trouble at the individual level, but also at the societal level. And the reason I bring this to you now is just to see if there's something that we can do to awaken our civic spirit to not let our elected officials behave this way, to force interaction, dialogue, and forward thinking. But I'm asking for too much. I'm happy enough that I didn't get a hurricane.
Yeah. You want world peace now too? Should I get to work on that?
Yeah, no, I think these are important things because there's chaos now. but I do believe that the big chaos is to come. And I'm not talking about next year. I'm talking about decades to come.
Let me just tell you a good story so you'll feel good.
Okay, good.
You need it. We need good stories because the famous people, all the politicians, sometimes it's even me, we're on TV, hooting and hollering and saying our piece. But about 6 weeks ago, I figured out that East Little Havana, this was before the health department, she calls me up, you know, you have a hot spot, it's 33125. I'm like, no, I have a hot spot in 33128 because I had lots of cases and not a lot of people there. So the incidence was extremely high. And as a matter of fact, I have my own spreadsheet, but in East Little Havana, in that zip code, as of yesterday, when I calculated the numbers, it was about 27% of the population, according to the last census, was COVID positive. And so we just stood up. I put out the bat signal and I said, I need help. And essentially every Saturday and Sunday, 100% volunteers, neighbors, the Kiwanis, Healthy Little Havana, people from San Juan Bosco Church, people literally over the past month, I've been able to mobilize 100 different volunteers to knock on doors, right? Masked up, gloves, to hand out masks and all of the health department information. Here's what you call. Here's how you get tested. If you don't have a car, here's what you do. All of those things. And none of that was done by government. I guess it was done because I saw the need of the data and I asked for help, but I didn't ask for help from the government. I asked for help from people that could do it. And they know it's not risk-free, right? Nothing we do outside of our own homes is risk-free. And we literally went to every single corner of that hotspot and told people, you live in a hotspot, you got to wear a mask. And I know for some of us, the idea that a mask is $1 or $2, if you're unemployed, that is a lot of money, a lot of money. And so just pushing that out. So all I can tell you is every time I've needed help to help the people, it has arrived. And so I feel really, really good about how, at least in District 5, when we need to get out there to help people, there are hundreds of other community members that show up on Saturday or Sunday, and they'll do it all day long in the pouring rain and the horrible heat. So we are working together, but those things don't get on television because they're nice stories. That apparently doesn't sell advertising.
That's a beautiful story. I remember I started Vecinos en Acción there back in the day when I door-to-door work is right there by Riverside, and I know that neighborhood really
well. But yeah.
Thank you so much for doing that. That is a beautiful way of ending our conversation, because aside from trying to create a dialogue with our community leaders to see what we can do today, I'm also doing this for archival purposes, so that we, in the year 2030, 2040, when we have another pandemic, we can see how our community responded. And amid all the craziness about, injecting yourself with bleach or using, among all the craziness, how it,
don't do that. Say it a different way, that you should not inject yourself with bleach.
Of all the craziness when let me just stop. Among all that craziness to have these beautiful feel-good stories of having residents come together and support one another is great. I mean, it doesn't excuse government, because it's government's role to actually distribute those masks and to distribute that information and to do the contact tracing and to call people not 7 days later, and not just to call them, but to follow up with them. That's the role of government, because this disease is bigger than all of us. So we need to be able to have a unified federal voice and plan that helps us address this. But in the absence of that, how heartening that, of course, we love one another and we're going to be there for one another. And Commissioner, you and I haven't spent a lot of time together, but I think you need to know I'm very fond of you and the work you do. So
well, and your work too. It's transformative.
So it's really, really exciting to speak to you, and thanks for giving me a little hope. The last thing I want to do is ask you to just talk directly to your constituents and give them a message. I mean, you sort of did it with that beautiful ending, but if there's anything else you want to say as an ending to sort of talk to your constituents about how we're going to get through this, it'd be great to close with that.
All right, to my friends in District 5, as I sometimes refer to you as District 5ians, it's up to us. District 5, you know it. It's Miami Beach, it's downtown, it's Brickell, it's all the beautiful Coral Way neighborhoods like Shenandoah, and the heart and soul of our community, Little Havana. And if we don't keep each other safe, and we don't help our little neighborhood restaurants survive, there's nobody else that will do it for us. So be careful, love one another, because it's our community. We've got to do this together. And if my office can be of help in any way, reach out to us. We're available, doesn't matter the time or the day. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Commissioner Higgins. Stay safe and healthy.
You too, keep washing your hands.